Okay, sending should be ready in like 10 seconds. Oh, there we go.
Good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll try that again. We'll call to order this meeting of the MAPC officers for November 7th, 2022 at 9 a.m. This officers meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom video conference, consistent with Chapter 22, the Acts of 2022. Basically, what that means is we will have to take every vote by roll call, and to call to order, I will call the roll. Vice President Monica?
Here.
Treasurer Sam?
Here.
And Secretary Jen, can you hear us?
Here.
All right, so we will say the meeting is officially in order. And why don't we go next to the approval of the minutes from October 3rd, 2022. Any questions, comments, or amendments to the minutes? And if not, I'd entertain a motion to, oh, Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that the pass-through on that public health grant, in fact, did belong on the pass-through.
Great. And is that denoted in the minutes that we should make a change, or?
No, it was just, I was going to follow up on it.
Oh, great.
Okay, so I have followed up on it and we have reclassified it to the pass-through.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments about the minutes?
No, I move we adopt minutes from prior meeting as
Right.
presented.
Motion made by Sam, seconded by Monica. I'll call the roll. Monica?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Minutes pass. All right, next we will go right into review of contracts. So who's going to take the lead on that?
We are going to kind of share this responsibility a little bit, and Catherine and I will essentially go through each of our departmentals, and we're going to start with pass-through first. I'm glad to put that on the screen if it's helpful, or do folks have it in front of them?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can follow along if you're just going to talk.
I think it's easier to put it on the screen so we don't have to flip back and forth between documents or screens, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. Let me make sure I put up the right thing, because you guys don't need to see my notes to myself. Great, can you see that?
Yes,
Is it too small?
it's good.
All right.
It's okay here.
All right, great. So I'm happy to kind of talk through some of these September contracts. Again, this is all of our, as a reminder, they're all our pass-throughs. So the top is the MARPA conference that we held at the end of September, which is an annual event for us. So funding going to College of the Holy Cross. You're actually going to see a bunch of things coming through this month from September and October on our Homeland Security and our Municipal Collaboration Department. So this is one of those around our HMCC, that's the HMCC meeting Health and Medical Coordinating Committee. And then Catherine, I think you probably have some information about these next two.
Yeah, so the CTPS, I believe that's just a standard pass-through that we have working with them. And the housing stability policy research, I was not able to get additional details on that before this morning's call, but we can follow up separately with an update to the officers if that would be helpful.
No problem. I realized I forgot also the survey translation. We do a lot of translation pieces. And so this is from our community engagement department, a meeting that they had. The last one in the September pass-throughs is another municipal collaboration Homeland Security piece. And then all of these in the October pass-through contracts are signing our Homeland Security support for different regions throughout the Commonwealth, because we essentially act as that fiduciary on the pass-through side. So it's a really big number, but these are those, we are always aware that this is happening every single year. And I think that's all of our pass-throughs. Any questions about pass-throughs before I open revenue?
Lizzie, not to put you on the spot, and no need for anything super in-depth, but those are big numbers for Homeland Security, and I know we look at them every year, but what is that for? Like in broad strokes, like equipment purchasing, or like where does that money go?
All of those, all the different pieces that are about the work that's happening inside Homeland Security. So some of it is about the actual coordination that needs to happen in each of the different regional councils. And you can see some of them are bigger, obviously, and then some of them we're actually doing the support for them. So that you can see for the Central, Southeast, and Western, it's like the true full pass-through amount. Whereas in we actually provide a slightly different level of support for some of the other Homeland Security councils. So it's not quite as big a number, but the dollars themselves go for all of the work that they're doing to do that Homeland Security work in their region. So sometimes it's actually buying things, sometimes it's actually the meetings, sometimes it's full dollar amounts for trainings that are among and between communities. So it a little bit depends on what's happening in each place.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Just briefly on that, Lizzie, I should know this. It looks like we do it for the whole state. Is that what's going on?
On the contract side, yes, we act as that in that fiduciary role for the state. I don't know if we cover actually the entire state. It does. Yeah, actually we do, because that's right. The Homeland Security regions are actually much bigger than I was thinking on the RPA side, but it's actually not the same. The Homeland Security regions are actually bigger than the RPAs themselves. So yes, I do actually we do this pass-through fiduciary responsibility for the state because we are the fiduciary.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Sorry for my initial misspeaking.
Any other questions for Lizzie or Catherine about the pass-through contracts? Okay, seeing none, I think we can go to the revenue contracts.
Let me do that. Just pull those up. I think I'm getting the right ones. Hang on a sec. Did I pull up the pass-through again, or do I have the right ones?
It says revenue August 26th to September 25th at the top.
Wait, I just couldn't see it on my own screen. Okay. Yes. All right. So Catherine, do you want to kick us off on the arts and culture?
Yeah, so the first one, the Mass Municipalities Public Art Training Program. That's where we provide training to municipalities, and then we also provide them a little bit of funds to do a public arts project. So that moved forward last month. And then Lizzie, would it be easier if I just moved ahead and did the other ones related to my departments? All right. So the next one, data services is not part of planning and sustainability, but basically how data services and our land use department work together is data services helps to keep a zoning atlas. And so this is just an update related to that. And then Medford municipal parking lots, we're working with Medford on some options for some lots that they have that are currently underutilized. What's notable about the next one, the Hanover Municipal Vulnerability Plan, is that this is actually the last town in our region to get an MVP. So we are very excited to be able to move forward with that project. And that way, all of the MAPC region has the MVPs, and we're also combining it with the hazard mitigation plan. Moving forward, the Nahant Housing Production Plan. What's notable here is it's a lot like the other housing production plans that MAPC does, but there's also going to be a 3A component that's plugged into it with some funding from an EEA award. So basically, this will allow us to also include an analysis of transit connectivity, zoning, and parcel analysis with unit capacity modeling, and then the production of the zoning. So this is one of the first cases where we're kicking off a housing production plan since the new 3A guidelines have been finalized. And I think those are all of the ones within my departments. Lucy, did I miss any?
No, I think you got it.
All right.
All right. So going back up to August, on my teams, the South Shore Public Health Excellence Grant, this is the grant that we got to do work with some of our South Shore communities. So this is the next tranche of funding that's coming in through that grant on the public health work. Moving down to the September September revenue contracts. Again, we have public health work. This is actually work being done together with our municipal collaboration team. And this is the shared services coordinator. So a lot of these funds will end up supporting staff as well inside these communities. But we just signed that contract with them. We are continuing to do engagement with City of Somerville around the use of their ARPA funds. This was something that we originally started working with under Mayor Curtatone, but Mayor Valentine has continued that contract with us to have us support them in their engagement. It's a pretty robust engagement effort that they're doing in Somerville. And I'll just note that I'm personally very excited about the Medford parking work. I know it's totally ad-libbing, but I am. And then the last public health one here is work that I'm very excited that we're actually getting underway, which is work that we're doing with DPH, studying essentially these root causes on the health inequity side, which is work that's been informed from COVID, but also work that we had done pre-COVID and during COVID around general health inequities around housing and food access and food security. So we're really excited to see that work go forward. And I think that's
great.
it.
That's it.
Yeah. Any questions about revenue contracts?
Can I ask just on the Somerville work, that money looks like it's coming to us as revenue. So we're in effect consulting with the City of Somerville in those different areas of what they're working on.
On which pieces, Sam? The shared services work?
Yeah, I guess the shared services or the ARPA money. It sounds like we're providing support to the work they'll be doing, but we're going to get paid for that.
It's a little different. The ARPA engagement work is that is really going to our communications and community engagement teams, where we're actually helping them with sort of focus groups and survey work. I actually think that translation piece from the previous pass-through was actually related to the Somerville ARPA work. On the shared services coordinator position, you know, we have done this in other communities as well. And in some instances, it's actually easier for us to kind of have the person in-house at MAPC. And in other instances, we're sort of helping to support the person that's actually working for one of those communities. So we have the flexibility to do either. And I actually don't think that's far enough along yet to figure out where that person will live.
Interesting. Okay. No, that makes total sense. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Can I stop sharing this?
Yeah. Any other questions? Monica, Jen?
None here. Thank you.
All right. Great. All right. So I think we can move on to hiring and staff changes.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and lead this one. I'm pleased to say that this is one of the months where, again, we have more people starting and nobody leaving. And so a few new hires that we're excited to add to the MAPC. One is in our communications department, and that's Amanda Bells, and she's our new digital media and marketing specialist. And I will say she is someone that has absolutely hit the ground running. To the fact our whole office is noticing how she's really helping us to streamline our communications efforts and help tell the good work of all that MAPC is doing. So we're really excited to have her on board with our communications team. And then we also have Sarah Scott starting in our land use department as one of the land use specialists. She's going to be a regional land use planner too. And she came to us from the city of Cambridge. And then 'tis the season for us to be bringing on interns. These are all graduate students. And so we have two that are working with the clean energy department. One comes to us from the Harvard Graduate School of Design, the others from the Tufts Urban and Environmental Program or Planning. And then in environment, we also have an intern who's only going to be working with us through the end of the semester. And so we only have her for short amount of time, but she is also a Tufts UEP student. And then we also have an intern with data services. So again, nobody left in October, which is great news. And we also have a few open positions where we're either reviewing resumes or in the interview process. So 2 within our data services department, we have a civic web developer, and then also a regional planning data analyst 1. And particularly the civic web developer, you're going to hear from Tim Reardon later in this meeting about some of the really exciting digital equity work that this team is growing into. And so these folks will help with that. For the environment planner 2, this is a unique position in that this position is going to be sitting in our environment department, but at least for the first year or so, it's going to be shared between our environment department and our clean energy department, the funding and the work. And the reason why we're excited about this is it's really helping to pull together our climate efforts, because the clean energy, the mitigation part, that's more with clean energy. The resilience, the adaptation part, that's more in the environment department. And this person's going to be helping us with both. And when it's in the 70s and in November, it's important to really be thinking about what more we can be doing to pull together these different parts of the climate efforts. We also have a grants coordinator position that just opened. And then finally, in our finance team, a revenue accountant, and we're in the interview stage there. And then we also, last month, we told you there was a clean energy planner 2 position that we had open. We have one person who's going to be starting at the end of this month, Julia Nasser. We're very excited. I'm personally excited because previously when she was a consultant, she was doing a lot of work in Washington, D.C., where I was previously working, and I loved everything she was able to do with the district related to their climate ready work. So we're excited to have her talents coming to MAPC at the end of this month. And that is it on the hiring front. Of course, if there are any questions, let me know.
Yeah, that is it is an understatement. That's great. That is a great report and sounds like very positive news.
We are very excited. I remember when I first started at MAPC, it was always kind of, oh, a lot of people are leaving. It was less happy updates. And so I'm glad that we're in a good spot now of a lot of great talent coming on and strong applicant pools too as we're doing interviews.
Absolutely. I think you can take some credit for that, Catherine, because you're still new enough that you can make the argument that you were the change that brought this.
Oh, yeah. And then I'll get like dagger eyes from Lizzie. No, part of a great team to be bringing on these folks.
No, I think that's true. I will note, I think probably after the election, we might see some other shifts because we do have a lot of really incredible people at MAPC, and administrations often look to us. And so I will just put that out there. It might feel a little different than it felt this summer, but I do just want to flag that I could see that happening over the course of the next few months.
I think that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So any questions for Catherine and her report? Okay, that's always a sign of a thorough report. Thank you. All right, so now I think we can move into the project update, which is going to be on MAPC's digital equity work.
Yeah.
And I see Tim. Does anybody want to give an introduction before Tim starts, or should I pass it right to Tim?
I'll give a quick introduction to this work, and Tim is also joined by Brian Luther and Will Pfeiffer today. They're just coming on camera. I know Tim is having like a little bit of computer audio issues, so hopefully he'll be able to kind of get in. He had to restart his computer. But by way of background for this work, our interest in digital equity predated COVID actually by quite a bit. But COVID was honestly one of the pieces that catapulted our work into this area, where, I think we were all seeing those same reports of kids sitting in their parents' cars outside of a library just to try to go to school. I think in Massachusetts, there's like a common narrative that digital equity issues are really a rural versus urban challenge, and that rural communities don't have access and urban communities do. But we really saw that debunked during COVID, and so kind of jumped in and did a lot of work in some of our lowest income communities, but honestly across the region in this effort. And it's really a joint effort between our data services team and our municipal collaboration team, and then particularly early on in the pandemic and in this effort, and I think it'll continue to be ongoing, our economic development team had done a lot of work in this area as well. And so when we did a call for update to officers, Tim was really excited to be able to kind of offer this update, because we're also hoping to really expand and deepen this effort in the agency. I think there's going to be a lot more, hopefully a lot more dollars to support this work, and then a lot more hands on deck that are working to do this. I think it is safe to say, I don't think I'm scooping us too much to say that the state was very impressed with the work that we were able to do in this area, and I think are hoping to copy it across the Commonwealth. So hopefully I didn't leave anything out. And I think I've vamped long enough that maybe Tim is connected to audio. Yes, no?
Yeah, I had to call in with my phone, It gave me the option of shutting down, restarting my computer and installing updates, and I worried that would be a 45-minute endeavor. So
Not a quick
thank you for
fix.
the intro, Lizzie. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. So, as Lizzie said, we've completed some work, and there's much more on the horizon. And Lizzie said on Friday, maybe a couple of slides would help. And really, the scope of work is so big that when I started to assemble some slides, I was like, you know what, I think I'm just going to kind of describe what we're doing and give you an update and sort of see where the conversation leads. I guess, in terms of what we've completed and what Lizzie said is we have now completed, in this month are going to post online a digital equity plan that we prepared for Chelsea, Everett, and Revere with funding from Economic Development Agents, EDA, whatever the A stands for, administration. And as Lizzie said, that was started by, it was actually Josh Eichen when he was in the economic development program, kind of got that grant and got that going. And then we continued it after he had moved to Mass Broadband Institute. And the results of that work really show that broadband access is definitely not simply a rural issue. It's really affecting a lot of our neighbors right here in Greater Boston with affordability problems. 70% of the people we surveyed said that they had a hard time paying for internet service. Just availability of high quality service. The three cities got information from cable service providers about the location of their fiber optic lines, which is something that any community can request through the cable franchise agreement. And we found that at least, and this is a bare minimum, at least 1/3 of residents in Chelsea, Everett, and Revere are beyond the reach of the cable service providers' fiber optic lines. So that means that they're just relying on coaxial copper or DSL or internet or wireless service to get Wi-Fi, which has big impacts on speed too. And so we're seeing that there's a lot of folks running speed tests in those communities that are getting basically sub broadband speeds. At least a quarter of folks there are getting sub broadband speeds. It makes it hard for kids to go to school remotely, makes it hard for people to work from home if they can, makes it hard for people to access telehealth, be involved in online civic meetings, all sorts of things. So there's a lot of barriers there. And internet, getting connected to the internet isn't the only issue. There's also outdated devices and lack of digital literacy, where folks either don't feel confident online or might feel confident but not have the skills to be able to be active online without being at risk of spams and malware and all sorts of stuff like that. So it was a very enlightening plan. It involved a lot of community engagement and going out to movie nights at the public housing complexes and various things like that to really get from individuals their experience of what it's like to try to connect to the internet and the barriers that they face. And I think that was a very, very enlightening component of it, to hear individual stories about the challenges that folks are facing. So the good news is there's a lot of things that are already happening and a lot of things in the works. So a couple of things that are already happening is that MAPC is assisting Revere and Chelsea and soon Quincy to buy basically in-unit Wi-Fi services for residents of public housing developments. So one site in Everett, one site in Revere, and then one sort of very large site actually in Quincy. And so we're purchasing, this is through a grant from MBI that we received about 2 years ago, getting kind of the fiber optic connection to the site, all of the cabling and all of the wireless access points in a contract with a managed service provider, so that residents of these public housing developments will get free, very high speed, gigabit speed in-unit internet access. And that is an incredibly complicated process, as Brian can attest. MAPC has a ton of experience doing procurement. Brian has, definitely, this is not his first rodeo. And yet the things that we're finding out as we're procuring this, the types of contracts that need to be done, the various requirements, the different ways that we have to procure different types of services and procurement vehicles for those is extremely complicated. Brian's done a fantastic job of navigating through all that, and we're putting together a playbook so that we can basically all our lessons learned will be available to other cities, other public housing authorities, community development corporations who want to do the same thing. The other thing that we're doing is working with organizations who are providing devices in digital literacy. And so there's some organizations like Tech Goes Home, one in Revere called MAPC, and they provide trainings, they do device refurbishment and distribution. And then, and so what one of the things that Will Pfeffer, who's our civic technologist, has been working on is that MAPC is going to be setting up like basically a computer lab in the public housing authority buildings where we're going to be doing these this Wi-Fi, so that there's going to be resources and training and help available for people. So it's not just we'll give them the bandwidth and then let them fend on their own, but actually really support folks who are not digital natives and don't have that kind of experience, and so really help them understand how they can operate effectively and safely online. And I think that's going to be a very important program to make sure that all these federal and state investments get a lot of uptake and successful uptake. So I think there's probably and so there's a number of, in terms of looking forward, a number of these projects that we're, like I said, we're investigating one in Quincy. Actually have very advanced conversations there to do a site in Quincy, and then also in Peabody looking at a site up there. And the scale and scope of this work is only going to increase. So Mass Broadband Institute has a $50 million digital equity fund, which is just sort of the next tranche of money, which will then be followed by much larger IIJA and a program called BEAD, which is a broadband connectivity program. And so there's going to be a lot of money moving into this space. And I think the work of the team to do these plans and get these procurements in the ground has positioned us really well. Mass Broadband Institute just accepted responses on 2 solicitations they put out. One is for a stable of consultants to provide digital equity planning services to municipalities. And so kind of like municipal vulnerability program or something like that, there'll be a stable of consultants. Municipalities who want to do a digital equity plan can then get matched up or maybe have a choice of consultants. So we'll be one of those. Those plans will be paid for by MBI. And that'll be a good opportunity for MAPC to leverage our experience and then also support our communities as they're working on these things. The other solicitation was for what MBI is calling a partnerships program. And this will actually support capital investments in affordable housing Wi-Fi, like we're doing in Chelsea and Revere, digital literacy, the kind of trainings, and then device distribution, as well as a couple other areas of digital literacy or digital equity that we're not as involved in, like public space Wi-Fi or subsidy adoption or various things like that. But those 3, the affordable housing Wi-Fi, digital literacy, and device distribution are right in our wheelhouse. So just about a week and a half ago, Stephen Larrick, our digital services manager, and Will submitted a $15 million concept paper to MBI for a program that would move these activities forward region-wide. About $10 million of that would be capital expenses on affordable housing Wi-Fi. Some of it would go to partners like Masira and Tech Goes Home to provide the digital literacy. And then probably about $300,000 would stay at MAPC to basically develop a pipeline of projects, to do the procurement, manage the procurement for all of those, and then coordinate the provision of digital literacy and device distribution. We heard back, I think, last week that we have been selected to be in the stable of consultants for the digital equity planning program. So the solicitations on that haven't gone out to municipalities. Like, we're not exactly sure how they'll be able to apply, but we will definitely be one of the consultants that they can choose from in our region. And then we heard back just on Friday that MBI would like us to come in and have a conversation about the concept paper for the partnerships grant. And that's the way that solicitation works is you're supposed to submit a 5-page concept paper, have some conversations with MBI about what they're looking for, and then they'll get a full application probably in the course of the next 4 to 6 months. So I think it's very promising that we heard back very quickly from MBI on that, and I'm both excited and kind of a little intimidated by the prospect of scaling up to a program that's going to push out $10 million of capital funds out to actual kind of construction and cabling and so forth. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to think about. This has been a small program that's been very effective in a short period of time, but figuring out how to scale it up to be able to deliver on the promise of that proposal is something that I think we're gonna have to work on. The good news is we have a great team, which I failed to introduce at the beginning of my remarks, so I'll do that now. Stephen Larrick, if you haven't met him, is our new manager of digital services here at MAPC. So within the data services department, he filled Ryan Kelly's spot, and Stephen's been with us since August. He has a very diverse career working both as a city planner, in a tech startup focused on mobility data, and at a national nonprofit focused on government transparency. Will Pfeffer is our civic technologist in the data services department. Will's been a partner and a friend of MAPC for a long time from during his tenure at the Boston Area Research Initiative, and then he's also worked at Code for America and has a lot of experience there. And then I think you all know Brian Luther on our municipal collaboration team, who's been just incredible, done incredible work on procurement and solving a lot of issues and keeping a lot of really challenging threads moving forward in all this. So if we can staff up with more folks like these three, I think we'll be in good shape to do this. So that's just a little bit of background on the digital equity stuff. I'm happy to take any questions or get any other ideas folks have, but I appreciate your taking the time this morning to hear about it.
Thank you, Tim, Brian, Will, Stephen. Great presentation, great work. Questions, comments? Sam?
I'd love to. Fascinating work, obviously very crucial, critical work. Lots of thoughts. Tim, right now, I want to get to the urban stuff. Right now, I'm sitting in central Massachusetts, and I do want to say that rural communities and old industrial are pretty bombed out in this zone too. I'm actually not in the MAPC region right this second, but you just look around and you see these old industrial communities that are struggling as well. So I don't want to, and the rural communities, these tiny towns, I don't want to leave them out. But on the sort of more urban stuff, there's a question with a comment to follow. What's your run time? Because as long as I've been active in Cambridge stuff, they've been trying to do at the very minimum public housing. And they're now on year 15 or roughly of trying to figure all that stuff out. And I know that they've probably in a lot of ways, and I'm sure you're much more up to speed than I am, they've battled through a lot of these, how do we do this? What's the right way to do this? How do we actually reach the people? So I'm curious what you're looking forward to in terms of, it's a question that's really a comment. We're in this for the long haul because it probably is going to take a long time to get to all these issues and actually build infrastructure in there too.
Yeah. Well, Look, we are in for the long haul. I think Stephen did some back of the envelope calculation. Well, so we proposed for that NDI grant, we suggested that $10 million could cover 100 affordable housing sites and 10,000 units. So that's kind of those are the nice round numbers we're working with. Stephen did some back of the envelope calculations, and that's about 5% of the affordable housing, deed restricted affordable housing in the region. So it's not even a down payment on bank terms. So yes, there's a lot of work to do there. And the good news is I think we're figuring out how to move quickly. I mean, these solicitations, that Brian issued came out, and I think the first tranche came out in maybe June or maybe even as late as July. They're completed. Construction will take place over the winter, and we need to have these, those done basically middle of spring. So I think individual projects, we can look at them taking about a year. We've really benefited from partnership with a national organization called Education Superhighway. And they have a huge program with multiple staffers working on affordable housing Wi-Fi in regions around the country. So they're actually a named partner in that partnerships grant, and they're going to provide some technical assistance and make sure that we're sort of leveraging what are the best technologies and kind of construction techniques and various things like that. So I think as we learn more, it'll go faster. And Carl Allen, who's the IT director in Chelsea, is always like, the public housing Wi-Fi stuff is great, but it is only part of the problem. And I think the bigger challenge that faces Chelsea, Everett, and Revere, and it faces the industrial towns and the rural communities you're talking about, Sam, is that we don't treat broadband service like a utility in this state. And it is as essential as water and electricity for people, kind of trying to live their daily lives these days. And having people rely on copper lines or wireless signals is totally unacceptable. So I think the whole other piece of work, which is even more transformational, is municipal broadband. So municipally owned fiber networks that could provide access to every resident, open access. They can have their choice of internet service providers at super high speeds. So Revere and Chelsea both just recently got these digital access plans, basically kind of frameworks for what that would look like in those communities. And it seems like it's quite feasible. And so that's another thread of work. NBI is a little less interested in that, but I think on our team, we're interested in trying to figure out how communities can do that. Because once we treat broadband like a public utility, then we can start making sure that every home is served and every business is served. And what they're paying for is the cost of service and not, all the other, profits and, that kind of thing. And so, and I think while NBI's current tranche of funding won't support that, later on down the line, once, there's a handful of, there's some other rural areas that need to be connected, but once there's basic connectivity everywhere, I think some of those BEAD funds will be able to be used for the build out of municipal fiber networks. So on that, there's a lot of questions about the financing of it, about the kind of legal authority, about where those live. Is it a municipal light plant or an enterprise fund or something like that? So I think there's some sort of policy and maybe even some regulatory or legislation issues that need to be dealt with there. But if we're thinking about this over the course of 10 or 20 years, publicly owned fiber networks are really going to be essential. And there's already some good success stories from around the region, and we're hoping to help catalyze some more, starting with Chelsea and Revere.
I look forward to following this story because it's obviously crucial. And as I say, and as I know, Cambridge has done a lot of work, and they probably have some good lessons learned here.
Yeah, we've been in touch with a lot of folks there.
Tim, before I ask Monica and Jen, just to jump on what you just said, I was going to ask about broadband becoming a publicly owned utility, because I agree with everything you said, right? Water, sewer, gas, electric, at least gas and electric are, allegedly governed by state regulation and state regulatory overseers. But I guess my question is, are there federal rules, regulations, or laws that make the complete socialization of broadband more difficult? I remember a couple of years ago there being that big FCC fight about the cable providers having too much control over broadband and thereby being able to limit the bandwidth that's allocated to competitors like a Netflix or an HBO Max or whatever it might be. Am I conflating a bunch of things that aren't related, or are there some sort of FCC-based concerns about how, a utility, like creating it as a public utility, might not go well with federal regulators? And if that's too much, that's just more of, it's a brain jumble that I just dumped on you.
Yeah, honestly, it's not. I'm not, but I saw Will and Steven's heads nodding, so maybe one of you can speak to that, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there are a few different things going on. Those things are related, and they're actually both part of the same policy, the Federal Communications Act. Is it Section 2, Will? And so net neutrality is actually kind of coming from the same policy. That debate over net neutrality is kind of about some of the same federal policy as the debate over internet as a utility. And there is a big federal debate over classifying internet as a utility. And I think there are a lot of reasons that debate might not be resolved on a timeline that works for residents of our region. And so I think what we try to do is think about how we can make tangible steps now at the local level. And one of the best partners on this issue area is the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. They have a kind of both a map and a set of resources that are very much focused on this particular issue of community networks. And so, Will and I attended a workshop and are kind of continuing to keep in touch with that national partner.
Great, thank you for that.
Anything to add to that, Will?
No, I was just typing that it's Title II is what you're thinking of, but like the difference between FCC Title I, which is an information service, which is what we currently call the internet, and Title II, which is a common carrier. In the same way that like telephone service is regulated, would that's sort of the shift that people talk about as net neutrality, and it has a bunch of like information and content implications, but as we're learning, it has deeper, more structural implications as well.
And just to date myself totally, I graduated law school in 2005, and this was what my law school project thesis was on, was whether we should actually be regulating the internet like a utility under both these questions. So it's a question that's gone on for a long time, and I think so much money has been made with the way that we've done things up until now that I think it's very unlikely that we'll see that big shift back to. I think because it would be perceived that way as a pull back towards a utility, and there are some potential downsides.
Got it. Thank you both. Thank you all so much. Monica, Jen, questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. I just really want to reinforce the importance of this work. This is something I've been working with the American Planning Association on, especially around youth engagement when it's coming to a lot of the community plans and the youth community plans. So I know predominantly been focusing on the Midwest, really in Ohio, where I used to be a regional planner a very, very long time ago. But I do think that this is incredibly important work, and I don't think enough people are doing, really quite honestly, anything about it. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of this.
Thank you, Monica. Jen?
No, I would just, both you and Sam touched on my main question, and that's where, if we had municipal broadband, where would that be housed? Would it be municipal light plant? And would there be any federal regulations or the FCC? What kind of barrier? And it sounds like all of those are major questions, if not major hurdles. And I wonder if that's where we might want to start that work now. So it's not an additional 15 years later, but I don't know how hopeful we are.
Yeah. No, we definitely need to start it now. And so I think there's been some work in, the consultants did for Chelsea Everett Revere, looking at their municipal broadband, and they identified some different models that are currently being used by Massachusetts municipalities, but we do need to, I think we need a concerted effort to look a little deeper at this question of where can it be housed within municipal government? What are the pros and cons of the different approaches under different types of municipal government? And, can we make some recommendations to that? The municipal light plant is in some ways that's like the most logical spot, but the problem is setting up a municipal light plant itself is like a multi-year project. It requires 2 votes of the legislative body and, lots of things like that. So it ends up being a very long process, but, so does getting the money to build out a network. So.
Right. Not to mention the moratorium on new municipal light plants for communities that don't currently have one. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, Tim, Will, Stephen, Brian, thank you so much. This is, as Monica said, super important work. I think it's unfortunately invisible to many, which I think makes it even more important that you're doing this work and that the MAPC is doing this work. So thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for bringing us up to speed on it today.
Great. Thanks for the support. All right.
Of course.
Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, team.
Bye.
Yeah, I will just say, I think from a policy perspective, it brings up a lot of really interesting questions that we haven't yet answered. And so, I feel like we're jumping into the work. There is also going to end up being kind of a policy piece on the other side that I think we would have to do to help the state think about this.
Right.
Lizzie,
go ahead, Sam.
No, I was going back to my City of Cambridge time of remembering, every answer was the answer until it turned out not to be the answer. And then but you're 3 years down the road when you figured out that wasn't actually the answer, and add a few of those up and you're 10 years down the road. It just takes a long time, I guess. But I'm sure there's a lot of knowledge now that didn't exist then. So,
I mean, I think, the conversation that we were having about sort of this, again, like when I did this research, like almost 20 years ago at this point, the argument was we should regulate like utility from a purely access perspective, because otherwise we were going to create redlining, and then redlining happened in broadband. And so there's an argument to be made that we can like undo that on the policy side, but it's also a space that was sort of loosely regulated in a lot of different ways for so long. And like a lot of people made a lot of money. So it's hard to pull back.
Right. And to your prior point, Lizzie, I would say, I think there's probably some issues that should wait for a comprehensive solution, but this feels like one where striving to connect people while more longer term comprehensive solutions are developed is the right thing to do.
Yeah. I think ultimately the need for the connection, at the time, like these questions were originally being answered, which I guess at this point is about 60 years ago, more or less, believe it or not. But I think at the time these questions were first being asked, like there was this perception that there wouldn't be a great need, but now, right, like more people have connected devices in their homes and have televisions and have a need for that access. And so because I think the need has outpaced the regulatory framework, we have to meet where the need is. And honestly, that's what this work is designed to do.
Right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. We are speeding along.
We're speeding along. Well, you know where this is going to lead to being able to tell Mark how good we are without him. But
I promised him I'd let him know if you guys waged a revolution. So don't wage a revolution.
Revolutions is just an efficient meeting. That's all. So the next agenda item is to look at the draft agenda for the November 16th Executive Committee.
Yeah, I'm glad to share that if it's helpful.
Yeah, that probably is helpful if you don't mind doing that.
No problem. Let's see. I think this is the right one. Yes. Does that look right?
Yes.
Yep.
A little bigger. Yes. So draft agenda for the next meeting, for next XCOM meeting. I don't think anything here will be unusual. We are not, the one thing I think to flag is that we will not be voting on the legislative agenda for next session because the legislative committee this week is taking a draft, looking at a draft. They're not actually going to make that vote until December. So this will end up creating the need for a December executive committee meeting, which we often have in the December right before the legislative session starts, just because there's a lot going on and that we need approval on. I do think that the legislative committee update will preview some of this so that the December meeting won't be the first time that XCOM is seeing the whole package. And then obviously there'll be an update around the economic development bill, which just moved last week. I was going to editorialize there, but I did not. And then I think we did include more time for a project update. There was actually a lot of interest in this meeting's project update. And so either I think we can kind of more robustly do a little bit more on this digital equity work or some of the other projects that we have going on that folks are eager to share. And then we reserved a little more time for the round robin again, because I think that was positive. Although I might suggest that we actually kind of specifically tailor the question a little bit more this time.
Great. So I think that looks like a great agenda. For the round robin, I think the idea of tailoring the question or directive is probably a good idea. I think that was a great agenda item, and even virtually, I think was a really nice way of connecting with people that we otherwise haven't had the chance to connect with in person or virtually. And maybe even, I don't want to make work for somebody, but if anybody has a good list of who shared, maybe we could do some targeted outreach to people who we expect to attend and didn't share, and just sort of prep them with being able to share something.
Yeah.
If that's easily accessible. If it's not, no need for make work.
Okay. Yeah, we can. I had to go back and look to the notes to see how detailed we got.
Great. Any questions about this agenda? Doesn't look like it. All right. We don't vote on this, right?
No, it's just for your interest.
Great. All right, so then the next agenda item is other business not known at the posting of the agenda, which I guess would be the time for me to thank all of you for putting together this great meeting in Mark's absence today. And I will definitely find the right way to rib Mark about getting done in 60 minutes. Well, I've done it before, I'll do it again. So any other comments or matters?
I would, because I'm always yammering about everything. I would just like to thank MAPC, the leadership team, and Adam for the MAN Awards. I thought they were really so right on and so moving and so powerful. And I sent Mark a little note, but I just want to thank everybody. Was it Becky Mann and her story, and then all the first responder people? I was really blown away by that. I really thought. The MAN Awards are always fun, but interesting, but that was something else, I thought. Really good. Very powerful.
I appreciate that very much. Yeah, honestly, we've known the Mann family for a really long time, and their personal story really touched Mark deeply because Becky and Mark's daughter are very close in age. And, it just, they actually reached out to us recently, Rick and Deb, about kind of how we can actually re up our opioid work and work with communities around substance use disorder. And so we're actually kicking off this 3-part webinar series and kind of doing a little more work inside Metro Mayors as well. So it was really wonderful to be able to kind of complement the award at the same time. And I honestly think that the first responders, they've been so wonderful to work with, and it's so heart forward for them, this particular aspect of the work. And I think they're really touched to be able to make that connection. So it was good.
Yeah, well said, Sam. That was an exceptionally moving award and presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I would add a general thanks to the whole team. And I know Andrea and Sasha and the whole team that made the whole meeting come together. I know it's no easy task to get quorum and all the requisite people on the Zoom and make sure the technology is working and everybody's coming on screen at the right time. And I felt like in my role, it went together flawlessly, and Andrea and Sasha helped me follow a script and do what I was supposed to do, which I'm very appreciative of. So thank you all.
That is the goal. They are Wizard of Oz.
That's great.
Yeah. Great, thanks.
All right. Any other comments or questions today? All right, then I guess with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made by Sam, seconded by Monica. I'll call the roll. Monica?
Aye.
Sam?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The meeting is adjourned at 9:59 a.m.
Great.
Have a great day, everyone.